Hello, folks. This is Founder Leroon. I am here with Fantasy Grounds College. Going to be working on a module that I've been picking at for the last couple weeks. I'm going to add the maps to it. This is a map module that we're going to use to help teach and illustrate the different functionalities of the map tools. So I'm going to be adding a couple maps. I wanted to go through that process with you in case you haven't messed with it yet. There's a lot of things to learn. I'm still learning myself, so I don't know everything, but I do have a pretty good handle on the very raw basics. I just need to get more familiar and use the actual tool a lot more. So it's just a matter of getting used to the tool and that sort of thing. So just a matter of time and dedication and also some practice. So I'm going to import some maps, and then I want to take and add some content to the campaign. I'm going to add some line of sight to one of the maps, and then the other map I'm going to leave blank because when we teach the class, I don't already want to have everything done, and I don't want to have to undo everything. So that's one thing I want to make sure I get going. The other thing is just to kind of get some exposure to the tool itself, because it's important to learn different aspects of Fantasy Grounds, and this is the one that I myself am struggling with a little bit because I really didn't touch it until they had it released to public. So I kind of wanted to wait, and here I am facing the challenges and the newness of it. Right now I already have the story created, so if I go to my story elements, I have different chapters and different things set up here. I have to go through these because I noticed in one of my samples that I had these little links posted and they didn't turn out correctly, so I have to take those out. But there's like little pieces of artwork that aren't big enough that didn't show up correctly in the reference manual, so I have to fix those. It's just basically just some links to some images I need to remove. I'll leave the images in the module, but I don't think I'll need them for this actual tutorial. So I got to fix those. When I rendered the module, it didn't turn out right. So anyhow, first things first, I'm going to go to the images area, and I'm going to filter it to the Fantasy Grounds College mapping course because that's the folder that I put all the artwork in. And then I'm going to go to my library folder, or excuse me, assets. And in the assets folder, I have a campaign folder. So under images and then campaign, if I go in here, there's some figures and photos. There's some lighting figures and handouts. There's a couple logos here. And now I want to click on folder, and I'm going to go to the back end, and I'm going to create another folder. And I'm going to call this sample, or they're donated maps from different cartographers. So I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call this donated maps. And as I get maps from our cartography community, I'm going to add them to the module and update it. That way we have different types of maps to show people and to illustrate how to use the tools. So right now I'm just editing the folder for this, and then I'm going to drop my new artwork in there that I got from Angela Maps. She's an independent cartographer. She creates things with Incarnate, things like that. She does a pretty good job, and I like her work, and she's been very active lately, and I've reached out to her a few times and discussed different varieties of things. But for the most part, we talk about maps and Fantasy Grounds and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and check that out. And in my hard drive, I have a couple different pictures, and then I have a token that I want to grab. And as soon as I do that, I'm going to copy and paste them into our folder so that it's accessible to me when it comes to using this module. So I'm going to copy the data from my downloads folder, and then I have another folder that is the back end of Fantasy Grounds just tied into this campaign. So I'm going to go to that folder, and I have a new folder called Donated Maps. And I'm going to paste that in there. And one of them is a token, so I need to take that one and move it to the tokens folder. So that one, I'm going to go back to images in the back end where the campaign directories are. And I want to go back to Mapping Tools 101 and I find a folder called Tokens. And from there, I'm just going to take and add the token that I want to use for illustrating the project here. So what I have here is now if I refresh, which is this little refresh folder assets, there is the new folder called Donated Maps. If I double click on that, there's the 2 maps that were donated. And these were by Angela Maps. These are both for us. We can distribute them and share them. And here we're going to actually put the line of sight on here. She just put in just enough information here to where we can show how the tool works. So I might do that during the stream. And then the next tool is basically the same thing, but it already has a grid on it. So we'll see how this works out. But to add assets from this campaign, you can do it a couple ways. If you have a bunch of files, you can create campaign assets just by clicking in the maps area. It says create from campaign assets. And you can do that, but the problem is that I've already done that for a majority of these images. So I'm just going to drag them over here and into this group. And it will create an image. And then I'm going to drop the other one. And that's the quick way to do it. And what that does is it brings those over as map assets. So now what I'm going to do is double click those and take a look at them in Fantasy Grounds. So double click the first one. This does not have a grid, or actually this does. I have to look. So when you open this up, yeah, this has a grid on it. So when I look at this, I'm going to expand it so I can see it better. I'm going to reshape and resize the window so it's more conducive to looking at. And then expand it like that. So here's the map that she made, and this one has a grid on it. So I think she said it was 100 or 200. I don't remember what the grid size was, but that's the first thing you want to do with a map. You want to put the grid size on here. So I'm going to click on grid, and then let's click on this thing here. I'm going to go with 100 first. That was pretty close, yeah. And then I'm going to take and, yeah, that was right on. So 100 by 100 was the size. And then I'm going to take the color. This is like a grayish color. I'm going to go ahead and click on the color picker, and I'm going to click on something outside here. So you click on this little dropper, and then you click somewhere on the map, and you gain the color of the map somewhere. And then I'm going to go ahead and click this to turn down the alpha, and I click OK, and that kind of tones down that the grid, so it's not so obnoxious. And if you look, it's right dead on with the actual grid. So that was a good guess. I forgot what she had told me. I knew it was like 100 or 200 or something like that. 200 would be a pretty good sized map. Okay, so that's the first thing you do. And I'm doing this on the gridded map. The other map is non-gridded, I think. So let's take a look at that. Yeah. So this one doesn't have a grid on it. So this is the one that we'll use for teaching. So I need a completed map, and then I need a map that is not complete. So there we go. So this map will be left blank on purpose, so that way when we share this and show the class, we can start all over. So this is going to be the actual working map, and the other one's going to be a completed map. But I have to complete it first. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this for now. And then I'm going to open up the other map. And this is the one that has the grid on it. Yep. So this is the one I'm going to work on today. So as part of this module, I have to have a finished product and an end product, for the people to see what they're trying to achieve. And then I also need to have an NPC so that I can look at the content. So what I'm going to do is first create an NPC. And it's not going to be anything fancy. It's just going to be a basic raw NPC. So I'm going to make a group first. So this is going to be the map tutorial section here, or group. So I'm going to edit the group. I'm just going to call it map class tutorial NPCs. This way you don't have to have a full-fledged character, and you're just going to have a very basic raw NPC. But I want to make the group first. So now that I'm done editing, I can get out of the edit mode. And then I'm going to select that actual group and build the content. So I'm going to add an item. And I'm going to call this NPC Angela, because she's the one that donated the maps. And her non-ID name will be a female cartographer. Size is going to be medium. Type is going to be humanoid. And in parentheses, human. And her alignment is going to be neutral good. Her armor class, we'll see. So all her stats are going to be 11, because that humans get a +1 on all their stats. I'm going to give her a skill of perception +2. Her speed is going to be 30. I'm going to give her a 10 for armor class, because she's not wearing armor. And I'm going to give her 8 for hit points. And that should be enough to get by. So the size, the humanoid thing, the alignment, the name, and of course the token. So I'm going to go in the assets library. And she provided me with the token, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to go to tokens, go to campaign, and here's the Angela Maps token. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that in there. And now there's our Angela Maps NPC, just like that. So if we wanted to make a skill challenge for her, it might be 1/8, and then the XP might be 25. And then maybe we would put a saving throw bonus or whatever. But this is just for, for illustrating the map, not so much for a game or combat or anything. So there we go. We have a very special basic character, or NPC in this case, and I'm going to put her on the combat tracker, because that's how I'm basically going to figure this out. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop her in here. And this will be used throughout our tutorial to kind of give you an idea of how to see what you're supposed to see. And then I will drag her onto the map, but I'm going to go ahead and add a tool that will give her some light. So if I open up this here in the options where this little running man is, or it might be a wand, or depends on your interface. And here you'll see that there are different types of lighting. I'm going to give her a torch, which is the most common. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto her entry, and that adds the torch effect. So that is basically what I'm trying to do with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add her to the map. I'm going to make sure she's visible and that she's friendly, so that we have full control over it and it's not hidden or anything. And I'll drag and drop her token onto the map. Technically, this should have scaled to, maybe I have this scale wrong, but that's basically her token for this map. So that's her token for this map. Let's see if, now when you're doing the tutorial, I'll show the people the different things. So you have to turn on line of sight. You need to turn on the lighting itself. And then if you want to do a player preview, you can click on that. That's basically the torchlight illuminating the area. There's no line of sight yet, but that's basically the type of lighting she has. So temporarily, I'm going to disable these until I get them into play. But that's basically how you check the lighting before you do anything else. Put them on the combat tracker and add an effect to them. If you have a player, like a player character, you can add a character, and then inside on the actions tab, you can add the same type of syntax and have it apply to self, and then just activate it, and it'll go into the combat tracker. But this is an NPC, so I kind of have to do it this manual way. So that's basically just the real basic fundamentals of getting things going. Hey, how's it going, TXC boy? How you doing? So the next thing is I'm going to start adding line of sight. So that you have to sort of have this in place before you start adding the lighting effects. It's one of those things that you just have to get used to. I got a question I'm answering. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take and start adding line of sight to this basic map. It shouldn't be too hard. It's not very complex. So let me check that out. So first of all, let's go to the correct tool. So when you are in here in this particular section, we need to switch it over. So we already put a grid on it, and we lightened up the grid, and the grid's kind of a dark green. It matches some of the foliage. So what I'm going to do now is change this to line of sight mode. And as you can see, there's no line of sight. So what I'm going to do is actually, this is going to be really simple because it's not that complex of a map. So I'm actually going to make two squares basically around this map itself. But I first want to make the doors, and these are windows, so we'll have windows as well. So here's a doorway. So I'm going to go ahead and make that first. And you want to try to make doorways as thick as you can. And they don't need to be perfect, but they do need to connect to the walls. Otherwise, you'll get bleed through. So I'm going to go ahead and add the doors and windows first. I think that's a little easier to do, and then draw lines through them. So like, for instance, this doorway, I'm not going to exactly trace exactly around this. I'm just going to get the whole square area or rectangular area. So I'm going to switch to the rectangle tool, which is up here on the top here. And then I'm just going to left click and drag until I get the size door I want. So I'm going to probably go with about probably the width of the door, just so it's easier to click on it and it's not so hard to manage. Now, if you think that's a little big or excessive, you can go back to the select tool and you can actually, readjust it by dragging these corners. So I can come down a little bit and make it look a little bit less sticking out of the building. So you can adjust these, but I recommend you get them all in place first and then go back and adjust them. Because if you're switching back and forth between tools, it's not as efficient. So in other words, if you're doing one thing at a time, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does take time. So like the windows, for instance, this is a big picture window. It looks like there's a curtain rod with two curtains, and then this piece here is the actual window. So they have the window open. So I'm going to go ahead and add the window to this cube or this rectangle here. So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to switch to basically the window tool. And that is basically just the same process. I'm just going to drag from here to there. And oops, I didn't see. I'm in the selection mode. I got to be in the correct mode. So rectangle tool, window, and now I'm going to drag this and put it in. So you got to remember to switch between the tools up here. I always forget that. So here's that, and there's another window down here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as well. So I'm still in the same tool, rectangle and a window tool. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop this, and that should take care of that. And I'm going to go around this building and see what else I have. So in this back room, that's kind of like a treasure room. I don't really see a doorway, so I'm going to make it a secret door back to that area. So that'll be fun. These are bookshelves, so I can do those later. And these are lanterns, so there's no window on this side or anywhere else, and there's no other doors, just a front door. So it looks like what I have left is a secret door. So I'm going to go ahead and click on a secret or toggleable wall, and I'm going to put it on one of these squares here. So this looks like it's good of any, or behind the couch, something like that. That might be a cool place for a hidden door. So I'm going to go ahead and place that somewhere, or maybe the wood shelf triggers the trap or the secret door. So maybe I'll put it here. I think that makes more sense. And it's farther away from the main door. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this map. So you want to lock your maps while you're doing line of sight in case you move it. Because if you move the tile, the whole map tile by accident, then it ruins the coordinates. So you got to be careful with that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is add the secret door. So I'm on the secret door toggleable wall, and I'm on the rectangle tool. And all I'm going to do is draw a rectangle around this piece of wall here. And this is going to be my secret toggleable doorway for the secret door. And if you want to adjust it, like I'm going to do now, you need to go on the select tool. So don't try to adjust it when you're in the drawing tools, because that's usually what people do. Is they'll be in one of these tools, and when you click on the map, it'll draw a line. You want to be in the selection tool if you want to select a point or a line or an asset. It's one of the things you got to get used to when you're using the map tool. So in every situation, there's a selection tool. Make sure you're in there when you want to move things around. When I mean there, I'm talking about the select option. If you're in one of the drawing tools or in the tiles and you're still in the tile mode, it's going to keep creating more tiles. So you want to make sure that you're in the correct selection tool, not the stamping tool. And that's the same thing with almost anything. So I'm going to go back to the line of sight. I'm in the toggleable wall or the secret door. And that should be about what we're going to have for walls and windows. Now, to make this easier, I'm just going to go to the rectangle tool, since this is just a big rectangle, and then I'm going to also click on the wall itself. And all you have to do is try to place this, just offset from the wall. You don't have to be right on the edge, but I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out a little bit so I could see what I'm doing. You can use the tool or the arrow keys once you've clicked somewhere on the map, not on a token, but if you're on the map somewhere, and you can just use the arrow keys to position the map where you want it. That's provided you don't have something else selected. So you just click anywhere on the map that doesn't have anything, and then use the arrow keys to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this square. So I want to make sure I'm in the wall tool and rectangle. So I'm going to start in about the center and just draw this out and do the best I can to get centered inside of the actual wall itself. So maybe close to the middle. And that's basically the real basic line of sight tool. Now there's one more wall I need to put in, and that's down here at the bottom to the south. Because this is a kind of a false wall. So I want to go ahead and add this line. So I need to go to the line tool instead of the actual square tool. And what I'm going to do is start here where you just click on a line, and it's on snap to grid, so it should pick up that line. Now, if you're trying to go with a micro edit, like you're trying to go to a really tiny, small area and zoom way in, it's harder to do that. And if you have to draw past the line, that's okay. Because what that's going to do is it's going to ensure that, one, you're attached to the wall. So what I'm saying is you're not always here. So I need to go back to the selection tool. So it's starting to draw lines again. So when you zoom in, as you can see, this is not fully connected. So that's why it's better to draw past the line than just to try to target it. So now I'm going to go to the selection tool. I'm going to click on this and drag it. now it's connected. So when you're making lines, go ahead and overlap a little. It's not going to hurt anything. And then what you can do is when you go to fix it or edit the line itself, it's easier because then you have an area to work with. So if I, so if I click there, I can just delete that point and it gets rid of that excess tail. So it's really easy to do it that way instead of trying to, yeah, see, I messed up the wall. I didn't, yeah, see, I moved it, so I need to move it again back to where it belongs. And they took away Control Z, so this goes there, this goes here. I'm going to get rid of this point. It's unnecessary. I'm going to click on this point and hit the minus key, and that will, or you can find the shortcut for it. Now, how you handle doorways, so I cleaned that line up, so there's no more excess on it, and you're going to be on the line now. So when you're trying to connect lines together, it's better if you just overdraw it or maybe leave a little room and then cross over it, as opposed to trying to click right on it, because it's hard to do that. So now that I have the basic walls drawn in, I need to eliminate the wall through the windows and the doors. So the best way to do this, the way that they show it for SmiteWorks, is to go to the line tool, make sure that you're in the wall tool, just draw a line through that center line that you want to get rid of. Okay, once you do that, you're going to be able to delete all those points. I know it looks a little counterintuitive, but that's the best way to do it. Now that you have those lines in there, it allows you to select all these lines and it creates that point. So now all I'm going to do is go to the selection tool and left click and drag, and that will highlight all these 3 points, and I'm going to hit delete. And that gets rid of the center line in your doorways and whatever else you're trying to edit. Same thing here. I'm just going to select all those points, hit delete, and the center line goes away. So it's a lot simpler to do it this way than trying to do it by hand. So here, I'm just going to click those. And as you can see, it shows I can remove the points or delete the points or just hit the delete key. And there we go. So this is the way to eliminate the lines that are in between the walls, or in between, yes, the walls, so they don't intersect with your doorways. And here's the last one. So I need to highlight all of these points and then hit the delete key. There we go. So that's really basic. Now the next thing is some of the definitions inside of this place. So what I want to do is put a little terrain on the shelf. The shelf is going to be higher than the person's face, basically. So I'm going to put terrain on here, and it's only so that in case you want someone to be able to hide on top, or maybe you have a secret area up there, it's not as visible. So I'm going to go to the terrain tool, even though this isn't actually terrain. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle, so I might as well go to the rectangle tool. Or you could draw 2 rectangles, so I might do that just to get a little separation in here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw on the inside. I'm not drawing on the actual right on the outside, just on the inside here. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the second shelf. So this means when you come into this room, you're not going to be able to see on top of these things. You can see from the side, but you can't see on top. And this allows to where you know it's there, but you can't see over it, that type of thing. So that is basically that. And if I want to adjust, again, I would go to the line tool, and you can take this and adjust the lines if you think you need to. Most cases, you probably don't. It doesn't have to be super perfect, because when you're actually playing, it's not very often that you're zoomed that far in to see that much detail. So I'm just adjusting it slightly just for the benefit of the viewers, so you can see that. And I'm still in the selection tool, so that's where you want to be when you want to make little edits and move things around. Okay, or select points. So now what we're going to do is in the center, I asked Angela to make a pit. So some people said this looked like a rug, but it's actually a pit. So this is a weird person that likes pit fights, so he's going to have this in his living room as entertainment. So he doesn't have a TV, so this is what he watches. And I'm going to make the pit tool. I'm going to follow the contour on here, but I'm not going to go to the outer edge. I'm going to go to this inner edge here, because you should be able to see the lip of this cement foundation here. So I'm going to go to the pit tool, which is this little guy. It looks like he's falling. And then does it block movement? Yes. Is it toggleable? Yes. So here on the pit tool, I'm going to just go to the rectangular tool, because this is just one big rectangle. And I'm just going to draw inside of here, which is the inner lip of the pit. And that's the pit. So we've defined the area of the pit. So that's basically the line of sight. So if I go back to play mode and I enable the line of sight, now she cannot see the inside of the place until she goes to the doorway. So I'll have her do that. So I'm going to take possession of her token, and I'm going to drag it over to the doorway. Now, I'm seeing everything as the DM because I don't have the player vision on, but if I turn on the player vision, that's what they see. So she has her line of sight, but she also has her token light, which is a lantern. So right now, she's seeing the ambient light outside. So I'm going to finish working on the line of sight outside. There's a couple other areas I want to explore. So I'm going to go ahead and just disable the player light, and I'm going to disable the line of sight for now. And I'm going to go in and put a little bit of contour on top of this rock. So what I'm going to do is go back to the line of sight tool, and I'm going to go to terrain, and I'm going to go to the line tool. And then I'm just going to draw some lines around the top of this particular feature. So just some mild clicks. You don't need 1,000 points. That actually ruins the well, it puts a lot of load on your computer that's unnecessary. So I'm just kind of going through and just kind of loosely take, even what I'm doing now is a little excessive, but I'm just trying to show you that you can add a few points here and there, but you don't need to add as many as I have right now. But for accuracy's sake and just for the sake of aesthetics, I'm doing this. But if you're actually playing, you don't really have to do that. So that'll block the vision from the top of this area. And then I'm going to do the tree that's next to it. So again, I'm not going to do the whole tree. I'm going to do probably like the upper boughs of it. So again, I'm in the line tool and I'm in terrain. So I'm just going to loosely kind of interpret what I think is the tops of this tree, so that it gets a little bit of line of sight so you can't see all the way through the tree, and then call it good. When you're done making a line, you double click, or you can hit the escape button, and that'll get you out of the line mode. So that is the rock, and now I have a big tree out here, in which I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do this inner part, maybe a little bit of the outer part, because it's not the entire tree that's not visible. It's just the higher parts of it. So again, I'm just going to click somewhere and start, and I'm just going to draw some rough lines around the contours of these boughs from the tree. And I don't know if you guys do it this way. Some people go on all the way on the outside of the perimeter of the tree, which is fine. But I don't see this tree as having the lower branches as much. I think it's more like an oak tree where you can actually stand under it, and it's not that big as far as branches go until you get up higher in the tree. So that's just the line of sight for the terrain. And then there's nothing really else other than these bushes over here. So unless you define these bushes as tall, there's no need to put terrain around them. So I just drew accidentally on here. So I'm going to select those, and I'm in the selection tool, and I'm going to hit delete. So the Control Z, they took that away for right now, but they'll bring it back later. So now we have this. Now, if you want to, you can make this chest like a pit or something like that, or maybe a terrain feature. but it's to the point where you're standing next to it, and it's not going to be so tall that you can't see through it. So that's something that you'll have to decide when you're building your map. So like I said, this is a very basic map, and there's a reason for it. And let's say you wanted to add terrain to the scarecrow. So I would probably just add it to his head. I mean, that's about as much as you'd probably want to do. There's an ellipse tool, but you have to have something about the size of this square. It's hard to do it on this. So if you're going to do the ellipse tool, you need a circle that's at least the size of the square. Otherwise, it doesn't draw properly. So I would just use the line tool and just roughly go around the head of this scarecrow, and then that's probably about it. So you won't see through the post or the head of it, but everything else you can see through. So that's just a little detail that you may or may not use. Now you could make it to where these two outside bushes are taller and the center one isn't. So if I would do that, I would just kind of go through these, and we'll just say that these two bushes are much taller than the center one. So we'll put line of sight terrain on just these outer ones, and that middle one you can see over the top of it. So this is what we're trying to accomplish, is to, where exactly is visibility and where it isn't. So in this case, you can't see through the very tops of these bushes, but you can see through part of it. And this center one is basically chest high, so you don't have to worry about that. So that is basically how you would do the line of sight. I've seen some people put line of sight on barrels and stuff. You can do that if you want. I think it's kind of unnecessary, unless you're setting up some sort of ambush and you want rogues to be able to hide behind stuff. That might be a thing. And then over here is our shelves. So now what we're going to do is turn back on the line of sight. So I need to go back to the play mode. Click on Enable Player Vision and Line of Sight, and to disable the lighting, and that's what you get. So when you move this token, you're going to be limited to the light source that's out there. So if it's nighttime, they're not going to see very well. Now the next thing is do you want to include the ambient light? So I'm going to go ahead and turn off this for a moment, or actually I'm going to turn off the line of sight for a moment. And I'm going to start thinking about how do I want to apply the actual shadowing and such. So in the light tool, you want to go over to the far right, which is ambient lighting. And right now, I just turned it on, and you can turn the preset to moonlight, and that will change the view. And then you have to mask this area because you don't want the moonlight to go inside the building. So I'm going to apply a mask, and then you would go to the reveal tool in this area. So you can go reveal area or hide area. So I'm going to actually go to hide area, and I'm going to hide this area right here. So that hides that area from the ambient lighting. And now you can play with the shadows. So let me go back to player mode. I'm going to move this token off to the side. And then I'm going to play with the shadows. So if you go back to lighting mode, and then you're on your ambient light mask, you have to select that. Now we're back to editing that. So you can do the length of the shadows on the building. So it looks like the shadows are coming from the right. So you can change the direction and the length. So I'm going to just bump them up a little bit so they're a little bit more visible, probably up to 20. And then you can change the degree of direction. So I went ahead and switched the shadows to go onto the right side instead of the left. And then you have your ambient color lighting is on, or you can turn it off depending on what you want to do. So she has moonlight out here. And then if you go back to the play mode and turn back on the player view, now you can see she has a little bit of moonlight around the periphery of the areas that she's in. So you can see a little tiny bit. And just as a note, you can't move tokens through walls unless you hit shift. So the way they have it set up now is in order to move this token through, as the game master, I have to hit the shift button. and then that'll allow it to pass through. So just a heads up. So I want to go back to the, see, I think I have the squares. Yeah, I have them wrong. So this is too big. So I want to go to 50. Nope, that's too small. So I need to go to 200. There we go. And now back to play mode, so I can control any of the NPCs or players. So just remember that if you want to move NPCs or players, you need to be in play mode. If you're in edit mode, you're not going to be able to move them very easily. So that is basically it. I fixed the map because I had it set to the wrong grid size. That makes a big difference. That changes the shadow length on your buildings and everything. So got to be careful with the scale and the size of the grid and all that. So now you can see that because I didn't draw all the way on the edge of the wall, I can still see the wood that's out there. I can see part of the door. And if she comes over to the doorway, so if Angela wants to go in here, as a player, she could click this and it would allow the light to come through the building. So it's getting a little bit of the moonlight and a little bit of the lantern, or in this case, it's a torchlight. So as she moves in, as you can see, it turns into like a radius. So now the ambient light is in here, and her actual radiant light is on the edge of that too. So she can see a little bit, and all that does is it gives her disadvantage on her perception check. So if she needs to look at something like the bookshelf, she'd be at disadvantage unless she moves closer. If she's about here, then she can see. If she's back here, then she's in dim light. So anything that relies on a sight-based thing would be at disadvantage. So the lighting is one of those things where you kind of have to get used to it. And it's also some new features that have been added. So if you've already played, you probably have a lot of bad habits like myself. And as you're placing this stuff together for line of sight, make sure you lock them so that they don't get moved or messed up. And then if you want to, you can create a folder and put all of your lighting and masking in there. So I'm going to go ahead and call this line of sight and ambient light or something like that. And then you'll take these and drag them. Well, I think you have to, yeah, there you go. Drag those into the folder. And that way you have a good handle on it. And then as you can see, the windows allow for the torchlight to come out. And so does the open door. Now, if she closes the door, the light does not go outside. So she closed the door behind her. And she walks up and she almost steps into this pit and realizes, oh, crap, there's a pit there. So she can see that and she has perception. So, but if she was standing over here and for some reason she turned off the light and walked over there and she didn't notice it, she might fall into it. So it's kind of up to you. Now, this illusionary wall is interesting because it's basically a toggleable wall. So I made it a secret door, so it has to be discovered before she can open it. But if you made it an illusionary wall, light would not pass through it. However, the token could. So it depends on how you have it set. So if she finds that secret door, let's say she found a clue somewhere. Maybe she bumped the bookshelf or something and it made the door open. But that's how you'd handle that. And then she goes back here, and then there's the extra room back there. Maybe that's the owner's bedroom or something. And then if she's going to go ahead and sit on the couch and watch the gladiator thing. So now the next step is to add lights to the area itself. So this person did not live in the dark. So I'm just going to temporarily unhide that so I can see what I'm doing. And this is a lamp or a lantern. So I'm going to go to the light area in the section up here. And I'm going to click on Add Light. So Add Light was where you would add actual points of light to the map. So here's basically a lantern. So I'm going to pick a preset, and we'll call it a lamp. And then you click on the map itself, and that creates your light effect. Now, if you want to move it, don't click on it again. You need to click on the select tool, select the light, and then move it. So I just kind of slightly adjusted it. And now that I have it selected, I can make adjustments. So I might, I'm going to leave the animation speed, but I want to change it just down just a little bit. And if you want to change the color, for instance, if you want to take on the color of the lamp itself, you can click the color wheel, click the color picker, and then highlight over which part of the lamp that you want. Maybe these aren't going to be bright enough, so maybe I'll go with this kind of a orangish yellow and a little bit brighter so that it gives off some usable light. And then I can turn down a little bit on the transparency and hit OK. So now that I'm out of that, I don't need to edit that anymore. I'm going to go back to play mode and check it. And let's see what we got here. So yeah, I don't think I turned it on. So let me turn it on. Let's see. I need to select that light. So I'm going to go to the lighting tool, and I'm going to click on this. And I made another one, which I did not want to do. So I have to highlight it and then take a look and see if it's turned on or off. Yeah, it's on. And then I need to go back to the player mode, and I'm going to click on this light or on this doorway, and I'm going to bring Angela's token out. I'm in play mode. So I'm going to bring her token out here. Oh, I drug her into the pit. So what happens here is that she cannot see outside of this pit. So if I hit shift, I can bring her out. And then I have to have her go out the doorway. Now that she's outside, let's see what this lamp really does. Let's see. So we hit Control P. And there's the lantern. So that's one way to add there. So let me go back to the light tool, and this is add light, and it's already selected. So then you can mess with the flicker speed if you want. So I'm going to go down to like 20. And then I kind of want to add a little bit more range to it. So I'm going to put 20 for brightness. And then the fall off is going to be at 30. And then I'm going to leave the dim and the dim fall off as well. And now I'm going to go back to play mode, and I'm going to toggle the line of sight and enable and disable the lighting tool, and then move her token back into the building. That's kind of a complex looking shadow, isn't it? Because you have the window and the doorway and the light coming from this tool out here. So she can see that light if she's out here spilling around. So let me kill her torch and let's see what happens there. So if I go to the party sheet, or excuse me, the combat tracker, if you click on the effects button, you can turn this off temporarily, her torch, and then you'll be able to see the ambient light coming off the torch instead of off of her, or off the lantern instead of her torch. Then when you turn it back on, it obviously it lights up the area more. So that one was a little bit more difficult to tell, but if you turned off her torch, you can see it. So that is just something that you have to play around with to kind of get an idea of what you're getting into. So that just kind of adds another element of lighting to it in case you don't have a torch, or maybe you have a different type of light. So I'm going to move her right outside the building. I'm going to close the door. And again, I'm in play mode. So I want to go back to lighting mode, but I want to turn off the lighting temporarily so I can see what I'm doing. And in gaming mode, when you're actually playing, this is how you'll have it. And then when you want to see what the players see, you'll hit Control P temporarily just to see what they have visibility of. And that's just a really quick preview. It's not a toggle. The actual toggle is here in the menu where it's permanent. You don't always want that as a game master because you want to see everything. But when you're confused about what they can see, you just hit Control P and that will give you your preview. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add lighting to these 3 little lanterns. And I believe this is a candle, so we're going to add that too. So I'm going to go to the light section. And again, I'm going to go to add lighting. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this in here because it's part of the line of sight tool. And I'll have it selected. And then when we add lights, we're going to add another, just like an outdoor light. I'm going to call these torches, and then this is going to be a candle. So I'm going to go and that's what I'm going to define these as, probably torches. So I'm going to go ahead and select a preset. So we have lamps, we have torches, and we have lanterns. So I'm going to call those torches, even though they're probably more like a lantern, and just click here and click here and click down here. And now you have all 3 of those, and they're separate right now. And if you want to put them all in the same folder, you can drag them in there if you want, for where all the lights are. That way it's not a big mess, and then you can lock them all if you want at one time instead of one at a time. And I'm going to leave them at default. And then one more I want to add is I'm going to add a preset for, let's see, I'm going to add a preset for a candle. So I'm going to click preset, I'm going to click candle, and then I'm going to click on the map or on the portion of the map. So I'm going to click there, and that's our candle. So now what I'm going to do is leave this area, go back to the selection tool, and I'm going to fine adjust these. So if I want to move that a little bit, I can, because I didn't place them exactly where I wanted it. So they're pretty close, but there we go. And then the next step is I'm going to add the candles and such, which I've done. And now I'm going to go back to play mode, and I'm going to toggle the player view and the lighting and all that good stuff. So now when she opens the door, she can see the light that's inside, and she does not have her turned off her torch. So when she comes inside, she's looking at the ambient light. Oops, I put her in the pit again. So I'm going to hit Shift, get her out. And now you can see the ambient light from the 2 different sources and then the candle. And you can see the candle flicker too. So that's pretty cool. So that's the ambient light that's coming from the light sources inside the house. And then if she goes back into this room, she can see the light back there. So that's basically the nutshell of the tools. So you have ambient lighting, you have the lighting that goes on NPCs and characters, and then you have lighting that goes on objects like these different lighting sources. So it's kind of like 3 different things. And then in order to preview it, you take this, and that enables or disables player vision. And this is the way you would play as the game master. And then when you need to tell what they're looking at, you just hit Control P, and you have to hold it, and that's just kind of a preview of what they're seeing. So it doesn't stay on. Control P just allows you like a sneak peek to see what they're looking at. Most of the time, you're going to be running it like this, just like you did traditionally. The lights are still there, but you don't see them as much. But when you need to, you hit Control P and say, oh no, you can't see that goblin that's sitting outside on the other side of the wall there. So or you wouldn't even announce that. You would just tell them they hear something out there. So there's your functions. So you have to turn these on in order to work on them and check them, and turn them off when you don't need them. So here you're turning off the lighting itself, and then you can disable player vision or turn it on. So if you want to, you can lock the toggling as well, and you can disable the lighting effects altogether if you want to. But that's basically your line of sight and your map tools for the lighting. And then I'm going to lock all those. All the lighting sources are inside this folder. So it's nice and tidy. You don't have a big, huge list of things. So that's basically it. So thanks, Angela, for your donation of your map. And that's basically what we're going to show in our class. Maybe give people a chance to ask questions, maybe add a couple other things. But basically, that's what you're going to get. And then I'm in play mode, so you can move your tokens around at this point. And she doesn't see that torch light until she gets past the threshold. And then she can see the light of the torch more so. So that's part of the vision. It's a little bit complex, but that's how it works. And then her visibility goes out here because of the radiant light that comes from inside here. The light spills out. And there is a drop off. So that's something. And then what you could do now is to make this even fancier. I'm going to turn these off temporarily. And I'm going to add a rain tool. So I want it to rain outside. So I'm going to go to the effects button up here, and I'm going to add an effect, which is at the bottom. And I'm going to select the rain tool. And you can't really see it too much because it's too intense, but there's the rain. And the speed is, I'm going to slow it down a little bit. And then you can blur or kind of blend the rain in so it's not so crazy. And then you're going to mask everything because you don't want to have it raining inside. And then you're going to take the enable mask and you're going to do the reveal area. So you're going to reveal this area here, or actually hide it. Actually, I did it backwards. So I want to disable the mask, re-enable it, and then I'm going to hide this area from the rain. So that way, when you're back into play mode, and it's kind of hard to see the rain because it's not daytime. So if we go back to the ambient lighting and we find the ambient light mask and we go back to the ambient lighting, it's still dark. So if we want to change that to, let's go to sunlight. I think I have it set backwards on the masking. So I'm going to take the mask off, and then I need to add a mask, and then I need to hide this area from the mask. There we go. Now it should be dawn outside. So if we go back to play mode and we bring Angela back out here, she should be able to see the rain a little bit better and the actual line of sight. So I got to check the rain. I think I screwed that up too. So if I need to unlock it and I want to go back to the effects tool and I can see the rain, I turn down the intensity a little bit, or the amount, turn up the intensity. I've just disabled the mask. Now I want to enable the mask, and then I want to just reveal the parts that are going to have rain. So in the reveal area, you could do it that way, or what you could do is remove the mask and then do it the opposite way, but I think I already have it kind of set. So I'm in reveal area, so I would reveal the areas that are not going to get rain, and that will show the rain mask on the actual map itself. So this way, you're not getting rain all over the place, and you're only getting it in the areas that make sense. So that is that. I don't know if I want the blur tool on there because it looks too blurry to me. Yeah, it's there. So I might turn down the amount so it's not so crazy. And I might blur it just a touch so it kind of blends in, because that's a new feature to blend in the effects so they don't look so harsh. And then make sure that the rain tool is above everything, which it is. And that should be good. And then I might add some clouds. So again, I'm going to add an effect layer. I'm going to go to the drop-down list and effects, and I'm going to pick clouds. And then I'm going to adjust the effect. So the speed is fine. The amount of clouds, I'll just turn that down a little bit and just kind of adjust it a little bit so it's not so crazy. And then I'm going to take that and mask over the entire area. And then again, I'm going to reveal just the areas I want to reveal. So that'll be the outside of the cabin. And that way it makes sense. It doesn't show what the clouds look like. Whoa, am I in the right thing? Yeah, she can't see that. That's why it looks that way. Okay, so now when I move her token, she can see the clouds out here, but that kind of doesn't make sense because she's outside. She should be able to see the clouds. But since the building is blocked, she can't see the effect. So there's something that can be said about that, but I think for the most part, that's pretty close. And then for those two, I might make a folder called weather. So I go to this, double click, change this to weather. So I know which they are and put those in that folder. And I want to make sure that the cloud is above the rain. That way it makes more sense. And then when I want to adjust it, I'm going to go back to the effects. I'm on the rain part. I turn down the rain and the intensity and the direction. And that should mellow it out a little bit. Yeah, so I can still see the rain. It's there. And there's her token. She's getting dumped on, so I think she's going to go back inside. So I need to go to play mode and bring her back over here. Open the door, let her in, and she's going to go sit in the couch. There we go, and I'll shut the door. So that's basically, most of your functions right there. So if you do this is what she actually sees. So this is a way to check that while you're building. Or like I said, when you're playing, you would just leave it like that and hit Control P, and that's what you would see. Because of line of sight and the ambient lighting itself. So there you go. And if she had her torch on, then she could see even more. So it adds, lighting is additive, it's not subtractive. The only thing that's really subtractive is a mask. So if you put a mask layer over there and then you cut out some of the sections, and that's subtractive. But for the most part, that's what you get. So this is just a quick thing. So now this map is ready for my class. So I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm going to actually take Angela off the map. And when you do that, it's no longer in that lighting mode. You're kind of like in a DM preview mode. But when you add the token back to the map and you take possession of that token, now you're seeing it as the player would. So that's the difference in having a token on or off the map. It changes the way you view it. So I just deleted it. So I think that's good for now. Hopefully that's helpful to you. So as a recap, I added the maps to my campaign. I added a grid. I made sure that it was the right size because initially I had it the wrong size. I added the line of sight lines, windows, doors. I added the pit, I added these shells and some terrain on the rocks and the trees. And then I went and I added Angela to the map so we can see what we're doing. And then I added these final pieces, which were the lanterns, a candle. And then I added the effects overlays, which were the terrain outside stuff like the clouds and the rain. So that is your basic tutorial on maps. So hopefully that helps you guys out if you can't take any of the classes or we can't get them up quick enough. So take care, everybody. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Yeah, that's great, Rusty. Yeah, that's great. Yep, this will help you with that. Just